Thanks for having us this evening. Um, Cooking is a passion of ours, and I'm sure it is for a lot of you. Especially once you transition over to this way of eating, you find new flavors, spices, tastes, etc. And there's so many recipes out there. We've really expanded our palate, I think.
And also, I mean, we could probably cook something different every night for the next 10 years and not repeat a recipe with the collection that we've accumulated.
Right. And our two cookbooks, we made them predominantly for our annual challenge, which happens every January. And I was a school teacher. I recently retired in the fall. And I was also a wellness coordinator for our district. And a man who runs our consortium of school districts for healthcare said, Doug, could you do the challenge you do for your district for everybody else? And I said, sure. And because of that, we started gathering recipes and creating recipes. And the first few years we did it, we used different people's books, mainly Rip Esselstyn's book, The 7-Day Rescue Challenge.
And also the Plant for Your Nation cookbooks.
And Plant for Your Nation cookbook was the first year. But we decided we wanted something a little less stringent. I mean, it's still oil-free. We still reduce sugar, no processed foods. But we wanted something that allowed tofu and tempeh. And Rip's book was a little more stringent. So we created our own cookbooks, and um,
Again,
the red one for the first year, and we had such a positive response that the second year we actually had some of the participants
submit some recipes.
submit recipes. And so that was a lot of fun. And actually, we've made a change. The third cookbook is going to be way later a little bit. I mean, it took a lot of effort to put those out these past couple of years. So we're doing our format a little differently. And if you follow us on Facebook or an Eat Plants Love, you can hear more about the changes we'll be doing for the challenge later.
You better start cooking.
I know, I'm going to.
These
So,
people don't want to stick around all
I
night.
know, they don't want to hear us talk. This evening, as you know, we're doing Patatas Bravas, and we're doing stuffed mushrooms. Stuffed mushrooms was an appetizer I did for you.
I did not like mushrooms when we met. And it was one of those things, my mom used to cook them out of a can and the smell would just make me sick. And I said, I'm not eating mushrooms. And then he said, you probably haven't had them prepared properly. So Doug made me mushrooms. I fell in love. And now we try and stick mushrooms in almost every meal if possible. But at least once a day, we get some mushrooms in our meals.
Because they're so good for you, as you may know, they're adaptogenic. A lot of them are medicinal, which means they benefit you. And so we fit them in our meals a lot. So the Patatas Bravas, I wasn't sure on the time we had. So actually, the Patatas Bravas would have taken the whole class. So what I did ahead of time is I started our potatoes.
And they're just roasted at 400 with salt and pepper on them. And you'll have the recipe, so don't worry.
Right.
So we pre-cooked the potatoes so we can get to everything else.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the mushrooms and show you the steps through that. And then once the mushrooms are in the oven, I'll start the sauce for the Patatas Bravas and the cashew cream sauce.
I'm going to be manning the cameras so you can get all different views so you can see what's happening. But I will still be mic'd. So if anybody has any questions and you ring in and you want to ask some questions, type it in the box and maybe we can answer them on the fly as Doug is cooking. So I will come back after we're all done and talk a little more.
All right. So let's begin. I'm using baby bellas. I like baby bellas. You could use button mushrooms, but either one. And we typically buy them in bulk because when I look for an appetizer, I look for them to be a certain size. And right now I'm just pulling off the stems, and you can see they're all pretty much uniform in shape. And a lot of people just throw away the stems. I've always said, well, unlike shiitake mushrooms have real woody stems. You really wouldn't want to chew on those things. But with the baby bellas and the white button mushrooms, they're tender enough and meaty enough, and they're good to actually put in the dish. Now, Shari did me a favor and cleaned these all off earlier. So what I'm going to do now,
We'll show them the brush though.
I will show you the brush. I put it somewhere. I have a mushroom brush, and moisture, water is an enemy of mushrooms. So the brush, we use it to wash off any of the dirt that may be on the mushrooms. So with the stems, I use the stems. I typically cut them into little segments and then I'll chop them up. And like we said in the beginning, if you have any questions while we're cooking, why did I do something, or could I have done something else, or could I use something else? Please do. So I'm just chopping these up, and then I'll use these and probably a couple other mushrooms to fill out the filling. So this is the main part of the filling. And I just chop it up. And in the recipe, I think I said 25 button mushrooms. Now, it's sort of variable. You can vary it based on your needs. For Shari and I, 25 would be a big appetizer for us for an evening. It would end up being part of our meal. So, typically I'll do like 6 or 7 for each of us. So I sort of eyeball this recipe when I'm doing smaller amounts to make sure I have enough filling. Now, with the filling, though, if you do have extra, this is good. You could use this on top of sliced baguette bread as sort of an appetizer in itself, the filling itself. You could use it to maybe even stuff shells or something and pasta. Yep. Put it in a sauce. It would be very good. So typically I want this, it's going to shrink down a little bit in the frying pan. But I like small pieces. I don't want big chunks because it'll make it hold together better in the mushroom when I go to put it in the oven. Okay. So I have my mushrooms and I have to get my onion. And I'm actually going to cut a few more mushrooms up just to make sure I have enough. No questions.
You really like
Oh, I love
chopping
mushrooms.
When we cook together, that's his deal. He feels like there's some sort of sense of satisfaction.
And if you have any questions about our program or what we've done or why, please feel free to ask during this because Shari or I can answer those things. I was never real proficient with cooking vegetables. I was actually, before I was a teacher, I was a baker by trade. I used to work for a supermarket chain in New York called Wegmans. And if anybody's been on the East Coast, somebody might have taken them to Wegmans. And they're they're one of the top supermarkets and most innovative in the country. And I was their bakery trainer. So I can bake anything. But when it came to vegetables, it was really like, everything was either steam boiled or baked. And I didn't know much about it.
Now, someone said that they're having a little bit of difficulty hearing. Is it both of us or just Doug? So if someone, I think it was Beth, asked the question. So if someone can let us know which one, we can look into our mics and see.
Okay. So we have our mushrooms. I put them in a little dish. Now, what sometimes people do is, so you can fit in more filling, take a little paring knife and you just cut out the gill area. And some will even scrape out the brown gill area to do that. And sometimes I'll do it if I'm not in a hurry. It just allows that filling to sit better. And you could actually then use this stuff as well in the filling. Yep.
We're married. We finish each other's sentences.
And any questions are greatly appreciated because it makes it so I don't feel like I'm just talking to myself, But once I had my heart attack and Shari started researching and we found Dr. Esselstyn's book on prevent and reverse heart disease. We found, we started, it took us about 3 years to get where we are now, which is oil-free cooking and whole food plant-based. It took us a while. because it's hard to give up those habits overnight. That
And
you
well, you did follow the American Heart Association's recommendations, and he was in the hospital a year later with another blockage.
well,
So
yeah, it was a scare. They said I probably had a blockage that passed, and that's when we started getting serious about, oh, maybe the Heart Association, because the Heart Association diet said, oh, limit red meat to a couple times a month. You could have 4 eggs a week. And we had our own farm at the time,
our
a
own chickens at
lavender farm, and yeah, chickens. And so we said, oh, well, we got healthy chickens, and I only had 2 eggs on Sunday in a omelet. And yeah, a year later, it was one of the last days of school before school ended. I wasn't feeling real well. Went down to the school nurse, and it happened to be a substitute nurse that day. And she said, "Yeah, your numbers don't look too good." So they called an ambulance, rushed me to the local hospital, and by the time they got there, they went in and they said, "Yeah, you have some blockages, and they're below 70%. So we're not going to stent. We'll just watch. You probably had a blockage that passed." And it was scary, needless to say, but sometimes you need those scares to convince you to make changes. And I was lucky. And, especially with heart attack, it's sort of like that silent killer. You can be perfectly fine, and then one day you drop dead. And the sad part is, even in my district where everybody knows my story, we had 2 or 3 people, one just this past fall, who had a stroke or a heart attack and just died. And she was in her 40s. So it's one of those things that you really, lifestyle changes make all the difference. So I got the onions and mushrooms in there, and I'm going to put some garlic in. Now, we love garlic, so we have a tendency to be very generous on the garlic.
if a recipe says 2 cloves, we probably put in 4 or 5. We just like it a lot.
So we sort of go middle of the road on our recipes. It'll be 1 or 2 or 3, but those that really like garlic may go 3 or 4 or 5. So
One of those things you can never have too much as far as we're concerned.
that's right. Now we have our herbs, and it's going to take a minute for those to get going. Thyme is one of our favorites, and you'll see that in a lot of our recipes. Now we used to grow thyme when we had the farm and out east, and early in the spring, the new shoots are very tender, and you can see this is nice and green here. I'll just chop this up and put it right in. Older stems, though,
They're a little woodier.
yeah, they're woody. Like here's a good example. It turned from that light green to this red, and it's harder and firmer. With those, I have to actually take off the leaves off of that. But it's easy enough to do that. You just pull against sort of the grain, and they come off. But these other ones, I'll just cut. And we got our fresh oregano here as well. You could use dried. This said
1 tablespoon of each, so it'd probably be a half a teaspoon or so, maybe a little bit more.
or maybe a teaspoon and a half. It's for flavoring. So, and it's and there's no hard and fast rule. We tell people that it's even in our cookbook that recipes are guidelines. Shari doesn't like cilantro, so you won't see cilantro in our recipes, or we'll say optional. You can use
Cilantro instead of parsley.
or parsley instead of cilantro.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what you like. People who don't like a lot of garlic, they will not put in as much garlic or no garlic. So that's something to keep in mind. You may say, hey, I don't like this recipe. Well, maybe it's not that you don't like this recipe. Maybe it's you don't like some of the spices or the ingredients. And with anything, they're meant to be changed. So use that.
Someone was curious if you had any additional heart problems after going whole food plant-based. So, I mean, you haven't had a thing. In fact, he started running marathons.
Well,
And
and yeah, so I had it at 49. I had gone to Plant Stock and met Tim Kaufman, who you guys, and Joshua Johnny, who you guys have had in Michigan. And here are guys who lost hundreds of pounds and they were running. And I'm going, I only lost 60 pounds and I should do some sort of exercise. And the thing was, is I started not being able to fall asleep. So I took up running to help me fall asleep. And at age 58, I ran my first half marathon and marathon and have continued running. That is my main form of exercise. I actually like it. It clears my head. And I still do that now, and I'm 62.
but you don't have any heart issues. Your cholesterol's below 125.
Yep.
Blood pressure's perfect, and he's on 0 medication.
And
Not a single day.
as you may have heard, the Framingham Heart Study says if you're not a diabetic and you have your total cholesterol below 120, you're virtually heart attack proof. 150, you're right, 150. You're virtually heart attack proof. So the Framingham Heart Study, longest running heart study in the US. It's been going, I think, 50 years maybe. Dr. Joel Kahn would know. So it said breadcrumbs. And, you know, the problem with a lot of breadcrumbs out there, either they're not whole wheat or they're whole wheat and they fill them with cheese. You know, seasoned mushrooms typically have cheese and seasoned breadcrumbs. Yeah. So over this COVID year, I've gotten back into my baking mode and I've been baking a lot of stone ground whole wheat sourdough bread. And what's great is when bread gets old, it dries out and you can make your own breadcrumbs. And that's what I did. And that's what I'll be using today is I'll be using some of our sourdough breadcrumbs for the help with the filling. One, tremendous flavor. Two, the only thing that's in there is sour, salt, flour, and water. So I know exactly what's in it. And that's always a good go-to.
Someone was asking about if I had any health improvements, and I didn't actually have any health issues when we started. I just was overweight, which, you know, every woman wants to lose more weight. I did lose, what was it, 31? No, 35 pounds. 35, 40, I can't remember. And basically I've stayed that same weight, you know, give or take, you know, 2-3 pounds in either direction, depending on the holiday season. And I feel great. I actually ran my first half marathon and I hated running. I don't have any meaningful marathon. I'm leaving that for Doug. That was a long run for me. I like more swimming and hiking and, you know, things that I can do for a long period of time. So I'll run every now and then, but Doug's the runner. But I'm on no medications either, except for thyroid medicine because I have my thyroid removed when I was in my 20s.
But we tell people move it or lose it, right?
Well, you have to move. You don't have to move crazy amounts, but you have to move.
You know, one of the things we've been doing in our group is really pushing the movement thing, especially as we're aging. And after age 30, you lose 5 to 10% of your muscle mass a year. You have to do something to mitigate that and to get you so you are not losing that muscle mass, because that muscle is what's going to stabilize you when you're getting old and you're walking and not tripping and falling and stuff like that. So you have to keep those body weight exercises. So we incorporate walking every day. Walking is good just to get that heart rate up, but we walk for about half hour, 45 minutes.
Someone said my mic's not working or they can't hear me.
Check your batteries.
I checked my batteries.
And they're fine?
Mr. High Tech. Yeah, I looked at the batteries. The battery's fine. So I'll just talk really loud if that helps.
Hopefully.
And as far as salt and Doug after his heart attack, since he's been keeping his cholesterol down below 150, he doesn't avoid salt completely, but we also don't put a lot of it in our cooking. It's mostly just a little bit for flavoring. We'll most of the time salt at the table. Occasionally we'll put it in a recipe because it does bring out a lot of flavors, but we don't eat any processed foods. And that's where everybody's high sodium content comes from. So if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet and you're not eating any processed food, and you sprinkle a little bit in your food, you should be okay, unless you have severe, blood pressure issues. And I certainly wouldn't recommend anybody doing that. But, check with, see how your sodium levels are and see if you are at risk.
So what I did with this is I cooked it down. Everything softened. The mushrooms reduced. The mushrooms gave up their liquid, and it's sort of a mush right now. And it's going to cook longer in the oven, so I don't have to cook it till it's all brown. I used a little wine in there, and that wine is just for flavor. If for whatever reason you don't want to use wine, you can use balsamic vinegar for flavor, or another kind of vinegar. Or you could use both even. So we sort of use balsamic vinegar interchangeably. It gives nice sweetness to things. So I'm going to use my whole wheat breadcrumbs, about a half a cup. Add that. And we love nutritional yeast, also known as nooch. And I know you had it out here for, oh, there we go. Half cup of that. I mean, quarter cup.
Use unfortified if you are a nooch lover.
We put that in a lot of things, and as probably most of you know. And I used some salt and pepper when I was over at the stove and we were talking. So, I stir this in, and it should all come together pretty into a nice mash. And you can see, and if I held this, if I squeezed this with my hands, it's hot right now. If I squeezed it with my hands, it would stay together pretty well. So now that that's all mixed together, I'm going to use, I have a small little ice cream scoop. This is like a 1 ounce, I think, scoop.
I use it for a melon baller.
Yeah. And when I worked in the bakery, we used all different sizes for, like we used a big ice cream scoop, which I think was a 3 or 4 ounce one for muffins, and it made perfect muffins. This, I can really pack and make it nice and even. And I top that in there, and I just saw that I didn't finish this one.
Now, Doug and I spend a lot of our evenings as kind of our entertainment to cook together. So I'm just here working cameras, but normally he's chopping one thing and I'm stirring another, or I take out all the ingredients and measure them out, and he does most of the veggie chopping. He likes to chop a whole lot better than I do. And he can do onions without crying, and I can't.
And if you do like our classes, I mean, if you like our repartee and way we do things, we are doing classes on Chibo. We're doing a couple a month. And Chibo's sort of a neat platform. You get to talk and cook at the same time. It's a little different than Zoom.
Because you can ask questions live and you can cook with us.
We can't see you, but you can see us and we can dialogue back and forth, which is sort of cool. So these are all ready. I'm going to put these in the oven. I'm going to put them in for 20 minutes and check them. Typically, it's 20 to 30 minutes.
I like them more done.
Yep. Shari likes them more done. So, it'll probably be more closer to 25, 30. I always put things in about 5 minutes less just to see. It can vary in things just because of the moisture or the freshness of the vegetables. Set the timer. And while that's working, we're going to start the second thing, which is the
Patatas Bravas sauce.
Patatas Bravas sauce. We already did our potatoes. They're all roasted. And the sauce, it sort of comes together pretty easy. First off, I need my onion.
Thinly sliced. That's your job.
Thinly sliced. And we're using our Vitamix mixer to puree this sauce. You could leave it chunky if you wanted it chunky, or puree it with a stick blender after it's thickened. But we like a smoother sauce for this. Now,
the mushrooms are in, by the way, in the oven. They are at
400
degrees.
Okay. We had a big onion today. We're making French onion soup later this week for
My daughter's birthday.
Yeah. So, because that's one of her favorite things, and she's gone plant-based. She goes, "Can I? French onion soup's my favorite." So we're gonna make a French onion soup. So I got these huge onions, but each one is like worth 4 regular onions. And 2 cloves of garlic. We used to grow our own garlic when we had the farm, but now that we're living in Arizona, we don't. But we found good garlic in water, and it'll do, and it's relatively cheap. So we've been using that a lot lately.
Until we can grow our own again.
Yes. 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Now here's the thing. With this recipe, it's spicy, it's not hot. We're not a real hot type of people. We like it so it has a little kick, a little heat, a little after warmth, but we don't like it.
Your eyes start watering or anything
Right.
like that.
So I got smoked paprika, which when we transitioned over and found smoked paprika, it was like, where have you been all my life? Oops. And for us, it doesn't matter if I put a little extra in. Cayenne pepper, that's one of those things. We only put a 1/4 teaspoon in this. If you're one of those people that love heat, you could definitely up that.
And 1/4 is a lot for us. We
Yeah.
sometimes even do a little bit less.
And next on my list, can of fire roasted tomatoes. We like fire roasted tomatoes. Typically they have a bit of heat in them, and that makes it even spicier. But like I said, it's not a hot spicy, it's just a nice spicy. Okay.
And our cookbooks don't have the sourdough bread recipe right now. That will be an addition, but Doug is working on YouTube videos on making your own sour and making your own sourdough bread. But of course, it has to be in stages because it doesn't magically happen right away. So we're working on filming that. So you will have a recipe on YouTube.
And, yeah, that's another thing where I retired from teaching this past fall, and it gives us time to do this full time. So our YouTube channel, Eat Plants Love, we're going to be putting more and more content out there. The latest one we put out is chocolate babka, which Sherry's father got me hooked on chocolate babka. But if you've had chocolate babka, you know it's not the healthiest thing. And we made a healthier version.
Still not, I mean, I wouldn't say it's the healthiest. It doesn't have any oil or anything in it,
Right.
but it still is, rich.
It has, this is where we differ with some. We do use a little coconut milk, but we're not having coconut milk every week or even every month. We may have it
4 times a year. It's in a recipe that we use.
Right. And, typically it's for those special occasions, a holiday, guests coming over or something like that.
And yes, we are completely oil-free. We still eat avocado, nuts, and seeds, but not like nuts and seeds are not as a snack. We use them either in dressings or on top of oats. And as far as avocado, those are kind of really addicting. I really love avocados. So when we do have it, it's kind of like just, we'll make a guacamole and that's our one time of having it. And then we won't have it for a couple of weeks. We don't do it on a regular basis.
Okay. One of the things with this recipe, I used, I said white wine vinegar. Now, white wine vinegar, you might have trouble finding it. We ran out of ours, so we're actually using white balsamic vinegar. That's good to use. If you look online, typically the white wine vinegar is more mild than red wine vinegar. You could probably use red wine vinegar in this and it would be just as good. But we also have balsamic vinegar in there, a couple tablespoons, and this. So this just gives a gentle sweetness. That's what's nice about vinegars. And today we just listened to a podcast by Dr. Greger on vinegar and the benefits of vinegar. We've known that for a while because of Dr. Esselstyn, and we have vinegar in almost all our meals.
Well, there's always one vinegar in our salad dressings, or when we have like our morning oats, we have a side of steamed kale and broccoli with it. So we'll put a little maple balsamic on it and a little nooch, and that's how we're getting our greens in, and we're getting our vinegar as well.
So right now, I have everything in my blender for the sauce. And we're going to puree this all together. And then we're going to pour it into a small a small pot to cook and thicken.
So you might want to mute the sound. We're going to
Yeah.
Vitamix. As you can see, it doesn't take very long, especially if you do have a high-speed blender. If you have just a Ninja or something else that isn't quite as fast, it might take you a little bit longer.
So what we're doing now is we're just going to let this start to cook, bring it to a simmer, and then let it thicken naturally. And it also helps to blend all the flavors together. And that was another reason to blend as well. So it's a nice smooth sauce, nice spicy sauce. And what's great about the Patatas Bravas is the potatoes are that I don't want to say bland, but that starchiness helps to offset the spiciness of that. Years ago, I was in the Navy and I was in Spain. And actually, I don't know if I had Patatas Bravas over there. I might have. But Shari's kids, who were over in Spain and did have Patatas Bravas, said, Doug, you nailed it. So this has become one of their favorites. They ask for it, and we like it too.
And they're picky eaters, so if they like it, it must be good.
So while that is starting, we have our cashew cream sauce. Now, in the recipe, it says to soak the cashews. But what I wanted to show you, and I didn't, because we have a Vitamix. We splurged for that. That was sort of a gift to ourselves one year. And what I found is, there was a time when I forgot to not soak these, and I had to get them quickly ready to be used in the sauce. And what I did instead is I kept them dry, put them in a small blender container, and pulverized them into like a fine powder, almost a cashew butter, but not quite. And it worked out just the same as if I were to have soaked them for a few hours. So I'm showing you that shortcut today, just so we have that. So I have 1 cup of cashews. And this is something else. We don't have nuts every day. Well, we do.
Well, we have
we
two
have our
walnuts,
yeah.
2 walnut halves in our oat bowl, and a tablespoon of flaxseed in our oat bowl every day.
So I put these in first, and I'll show you what it looks like after I pulverize them. So if you have any kind of high-speed blender, you could probably do this, and it would work out just as well. So it's almost like a almond meal at this point. This is just before, starting to cake up around the bottom.
And a lot of times you start a recipe and it says soak your nuts for 2 to 4 hours. You forgot, and you're standing there ready to cook dinner, and you don't have your nuts already soaked. So if you grind them up into this small powder and then use them, you won't be mad at yourself for forgetting that step.
And 1/2 cup of water.
That's what we didn't take out, the lemon. I knew I forgot something. It's in the fridge. You can take it out.
Okay.
Or you can cheat with lemon juice if you want.
And some more garlic.
And no, we don't eat our greens 6 times a day, but we do have probably 6 cups of greens a day. We just don't eat 6 times a day. We just don't have time in our life to eat that much. And we're retired, so I don't know how somebody eats 6 times a day. We usually, we kind of do the, it's not fasting. We do time restricted eating. So both of us wait until probably like 11, 12 o'clock before we have our first meal. That meal is usually a bowl of oats with berries and bananas and flaxseed, walnuts, maybe a little sprinkle of raisins, and we eat our oats raw. Doug doesn't like the consistency of mushy oatmeal, and it's just, we can just always do it. We don't have to really prepare anything. We just put oats in a bowl and we eat it. And we'll put some unsweetened almond milk on top of it. And
Yeah.
along with that, we'll have 2 cups, maybe 3 cups of greens, kale, broccoli. Sometimes we'll have leftover salad from the night before, and it's got like 15 or 20 different kinds of vegetables. But we always try and have greens with every meal. So for tonight, we're going to have the Patatas Bravas. We have the mushrooms. Most likely, we'll just have a small salad, or I'll steam up some broccoli, and that'll be dinner.
And we don't really snack throughout the day. You know, if we snack, we may have a piece of fruit, an apple, an orange, whatever. So everything is in my little blender cup here, and I just puree it or blend it until it all comes together. Now, there were a couple pieces that were up top, so I just had to. So now our sauce, our garlic sauce is
You
all
put
ready.
lemon juice in there?
Yes, I did.
missed that. I was talking.
Because you were talking. So this makes a nice creamy sauce, and you can see it. You know, it's nice and creamy and glistening, and nice and perfectly smooth. So that trick with the cashews, if you have a high-speed blender like a Blendtec or some of the other ones that are out now, there's a new one. Is it unbranded? I can't remember. And it looks like a Vitamix knockoff. And I've only heard good things about it, but it's like a quarter the price. Okay, now to make it a little fancier on our dish, we get these squeeze bottles, and a lot of grocery stores have them. Restaurants use them all the time for applying sauces decoratively or whatever. So we picked up, they're typically like 98 cents, maybe $1.25. And we'll use the sauce for this to decorate our plate and our sauce when we're all done. Okay.
How's our sauce looking?
Our sauce sounds like it's doing real well. So I have to go and stir it a little bit.
It's bubbling.
It is. I turned it down, so it's not burning. Our mushrooms have about 6 more minutes. So this, you can see how it's all blended together nicely. You don't really see chunks of anything. If you see chunks, they're real small. It's like a thick tomato sauce. And that's what we're sort of going for.
You still have to chop the parsley as the garnish.
Chopping the parsley. What we started doing, and if you have room to grow, even just in pots, especially in the summer, growing some of your own herbs, that's great. Thyme, especially in Michigan, because it's a lot like New York. There's not really a problem with it wintering there, unlike some other, like oregano and some of those. So we love fresh thyme. And in fact, we would, in the winter.
That's our herb of choice.
It's our herb of choice, but in the winter, we would actually go out, uncover it, you know, was buried by the snow, cut some off and bring it into the house. And it was just as good as if we picked it during the summer. So it was, that's one of those herbs that if you like, it's so easy to grow. We put it in a flower bed or a border bed in the front of our house. And in the spring, it has decorative little purple white flowers. And in the, and it grows and takes so well. And it's very winter hardy. So
We just moved here to Arizona, and gardening's a little bit different. And we have parsley, oregano, thyme, and dill. Those are, oh, and basil. So those are the ones that we grow, and it's pretty easy for us to grow in an apartment. How long will the cashew sauce last in the fridge?
We typically go about 5 days.
5 to 7 at the most. We usually don't let anything go past a week.
And that goes for almost everything. And a little throwback to the mushrooms. We typically, when we buy them, we keep the bag open and
Put a paper
we
towel in.
put a paper towel in there because otherwise they get that slimy stuff. So the paper towel absorbs the excess moisture. They'll last a lot longer and keep a lot better. So that's what we do with our mushrooms. Or you could put it in a paper bag. So to serve this, you take some sauce, drizzle it over the
Roasted potatoes.
roasted potatoes. You take your fancy bottle and you can put the sauce over it and sprinkle it with some fresh cilantro or parsley. Sherry likes her parsley. And
It's not that I don't like.
yeah, I know.
That tastes like soap. So if it tastes like soap to you, cilantro, it's genetic, and it's really hard to overcome that. I'll have
You
a little
can't.
bit of it
You
in
can't.
salsa if it's not the predominant
That's right.
flavor.
So this is actually our dinner tonight, along with
The mushrooms and a salad.
mushrooms and a salad. So it's a nice little dish. I'm going to check our mushrooms here. Ooh, they're looking good.
That was 20 minutes, right?
That was 20 minutes.
Well, while we're waiting for the mushrooms, does anyone have any questions that you want us to answer before you see what the mushrooms look like? Someone asked, let me see, there was a question. Any tips for roasting veggies like potatoes, cauliflowers?
You know, that's a good question. Actually, here in Phoenix, we have met with a local restaurant, food service. Food service meals on the go type of planner, and they want to get to not using oil. And so they said, how do you roast a whole bunch of vegetables? And the sort of the secret is you have to spread them out on the sheet pans. You can't have them too close. Even with these potatoes, if I filled that whole sheet pan with the potatoes, they would sort of steam before they started getting that crispiness. Same thing if you use broccoli or not broccoli, cauliflower. So you have to give space. So you could put 2 trays in the oven and spread them out and they'll be crispier. The other trick with potatoes is if you boil them for a little bit first, like 5-10 minutes, it gets off the excess starch and they'll be crispier when you roast them. And that's the one nice thing about that too, is they're wet when they come out and they'll hold those spices or herbs, whatever you decide to toss them in. And a lot of times we'll toss them in like maybe a vinaigrette of some sort or some sort of herb sauce type thing, which also helps it to adhere to it. So the biggest thing is uniformity as well. You know, you want them all to cook the same. So you want the them the same size, all the vegetables you're doing, because if you had, say, carrots, potatoes, parsnips, cauliflower all on the same plate, they're going to cook at different rates if some chunks are bigger than others. So you want them to all be uniform in size as well.
And they said they were having trouble hearing me. Can you still? I don't know.
I think this.
One of the mics just keeps on going out.
Yeah, I think.
But I will come over with Doug as soon as the mushrooms come out and.
Come on over.
Okay.
Come on over.
So if you can't hear me on my mic, you can hear me on Doug's mic. I'll just talk a little bit louder. I'm kind of soft-spoken. I have a big mouth, but I'm soft-spoken.
So
Let's look at.
these are done.
Let me put the camera on.
You know, they're lightly browned and there's no excess moisture in the bottom, which a lot of times the mushrooms will have that moisture. So you want that sort of cooked off. So that's sort of what I look for. I look to see you know, it's nice and browned on the top of the crumb mixture, and the bottom looks cooked as well. So that's our stuffed mushrooms. I think it's sort of an elegant thing that you could serve for company, and nobody would say, "Hey, that's plant-based" or "That's vegan."
They said they can't hear me, and I don't know why, so I'm going to
Uh,
stand
yeah,
next to you really close.
I apologize because I'm sort of the tech guy here, and we got these microphones, and I think either it's a set up the microphone or it's the
Some sort of technical issue.
yes. So I apologize
So
for
I'll
that.
stand here and just have to be close and use your
Right.
mic.
So except we won't be able to see the questions.
Well, that's true, but
Marion?
yes, you can ask us the questions if you'd like.
Yeah, Marion, if you see any questions that you think we could do.
Oh, it's hot.
Yeah, it's hot. I forgot about that because I was moving things around. But this summer, we're doing our plant camp.
Right, and it's going to be, we believe, the
Like the
second and third week of
August.
If you're interested in joining us, it's basically, we're going to just create kind of meal plans. It's going to be an intensive 2 weeks where you just stick to our meal plans and our ideas of how things should go. There's going to be an exercise component, and it's at your own pace. It's not like anybody has to run a marathon or anything like that. It's just making sure that you have all the healthy components of a lifestyle in your day. So there'll be exercise, there'll be a sleep component, there'll be a component of, de-stressing, and we're going to try and just encourage you every day. It's all going to be virtual. We're going to have some cooking videos, and it'll be a lot of fun. So if you're interested in signing up for that, you can always just email us at eatplantslove@gmail.com.
Right. Or if
Go to
you
our
join our
website,
Facebook group,
Join our Facebook group. We'll be
there'll be
posting it there.
information there. And it's for people who have been plant-based but struggle with doing it continually for a lifestyle. Because like I said before, it is hard to change a lifetime of eating habits, decades of eating a certain way. And those temptations are always there. So we're hoping, and this was a request by our school districts saying, I wish you did the challenge during the summer too, or twice a year. Well, the annual challenge is sort of for those newbies and for those that want a sort of a refresher. We wanted to do something that were for people that have really tried but are struggling. And we're going to focus a little bit more on how do you live this on a week-to-week basis? How do
There'll
you?
be batch cooking tips and
Right.
Guides on how to get your meals all ready for the day if you're busy, and just so you don't have to worry about what you're going to eat.
Yeah. So
are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions for us, or?
Yeah, I see some questions coming in. Sorry.
That's
This is Marion. Okay, somebody asked earlier, if you would mind repeating the brand of that knockoff Vitamix brand.
Do you remember what it was called?
this is the Ascent 25.
No, the knockoff brand.
Oh, the
Yeah.
knockoff. Brandless. Brandless is the name.
Brandless. Okay.
Brandless. And they came up with, and it looks a lot like the standard model Vitamix.
But we don't know about,
We
long term
we,
how it
we
works.
don't.
But it looks good.
But for $150 instead of $400, if we didn't have a Vitamix, I would have probably tried it. And you can actually go out there. I think there's some YouTube videos comparing them, so you can take a look and you can make that decision.
Okay.
So these 2 recipes that we cooked tonight are both in our second cookbook.
But
So
you
if
guys
anyone's
get them
interested,
anyway.
We're going to get them anyways. And we're pretty good about just sending recipes out anyway. So if you have a curiosity about anything, you can always just email us. We don't hoard our recipes.
And our Facebook group has a lot in our files.
Yep, we
as well.
posted a lot there.
Oh, that's great. And I typed in your everything earlier.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Email address, your website, and your Facebook group. Somebody else asked if you would ever consider offering a Chibo class on pastries, like cinnamon rolls and chocolate croissants.
I would love to. The problem with the Chibo class is to make cinnamon rolls or to make the croissants, it takes
rise time.
4 to 6 hours minimally. So I am going to do one probably on cinnamon rolls for the YouTube. And that's why, yeast raised things, you're basically looking for 4 hours minimum. And that's dependent on how warm your oven, your kitchen stuff is.
And sourdough is days.
And sourdough that's even longer. So even though I would love to do a Chibo class on those things, can't. But there's a lot of other things that we can do, and there's some Chibo dessert things that I do want to do.
Our heartbeat cupcakes.
Our heartbeat cupcakes. It is years ago when I worked for Wegmans, that was the supermarket chain I worked for. They asked me to come up with some scratch cakes, and I came up. I found this cake recipe in a professional cooking book from the 30s, 40s, and it was primarily beets. It was a chocolate cake. It had beets. It gave that beautiful devil's food flavor. Well, we had a blind taste test with the owners of the company and the head of the bakery, and all of them hands down picked that cake. But when the bakery director found out that it was made with beets, he goes, "I'm not selling a beet cake." Well, I remembered that cake. And even though back then it was all eggs and oil and stuff as well, and sugar, I
You
recently
plantified it.
I plantified it, and it is a delicious cupcake. Nobody would say there's beets in there. And two, it's so moist because of the beets that it's just a yummy
And it's a
cupcake.
healthy way to deliver chocolate.
Right. And there's a quiche that I want to work on. We made a rosemary cracker that can also be used for filling
Like
crust,
a pastry crust.
like a
kind.
pastry crust. And it is just to die for. Now that's something I could do in a
Cheap
hour and a half class. So those are things in the future. Like I say, we're trying to build up our clientele on Chibo. And right
And there
now,
are a lot of plant-based people on Chibo.
yeah, Chef AJ
Jane,
is there.
Jane and Ann Esselstyn were the ones probably that started it
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
But there are a lot, so, take advantage of it. It's costly, but in the
Well-
sense that it costs you money to go, but can't go out and do anything now anyway. So this is your entertainment. cost.
They're some of them are $20, $25 a class, and you think of what you'd spend that on. We're trying to keep ours to about $15 a class, depending on what we're teaching. So yes, actually, that's probably, if we do a third cookbook, in my head, I want to do a plant-based baking.
We still may do the
Well,
soup salads and
yeah.
sides, but just not for this fall.
Right.
Because we're working on our camp and we got a lot of things in the works.
Yeah, it was
And
getting a
YouTube
little
videos.
stressful. Yeah. So, yeah, keep in touch, and please, if you have suggestions for classes that you'd want to see,
Write to us.
write to us, because we need that too. Basically, right now we're just sort of flying by the seat of our pants, saying, what do we think people would like? We
Just
had,
don't ask us to make anything with cilantro.
but we do try to be oil free. And the problem with croissants is, yes, you can make a plant-based croissant,
But not oil
but
free.
you have to use a kind of fat to produce those layers, and to produce those layers, that fat would be something like Mayoko's butter and stuff. And we that again would be like special occasion,
Right.
once a year type of thing. We make apple pie every Thanksgiving. That is my sort of one vice.
Rare and appropriate.
Rare and
as
appropriate,
Ray and Juliana used to
Yeah,
say.
Ray Cronice and Juliana Hever would say rare and appropriate. So, once a year, that's fine. When I was teaching kids at school, I'd say, when do you have birthday cake? And they'd say, on your birthday.
Not
Yes.
everybody's birthday, just your own birthday.
Right. So, that's sort of how we still enjoy some of our favorite foods, but we just don't enjoy them every week or every month, just for those special occasions, which makes it even more enjoyable, I think.
Yeah, it's exciting. You look forward to that one event instead of it being, every night you have a dessert, or once a week you have that, bad thing that has, something in it that's maybe too much avocado or nuts or whatever. We save it for once or twice a year, maybe 4 tops if there's an event. But otherwise, we stick to pretty much eating whole food, plant-based, no oil. We never use oil. We
No.
don't even have any in the house.
And really junk food as well. I mean, we don't.
We don't buy anything processed except pasta.
And
And
we
it's brown rice pasta.
And we have a tendency not even to go out to eat, because typically the food we eat at home is better. And
Tastes
we,
better and it's healthier.
and we know what's in it.
Yeah, in restaurants, there's always oil and salt and sugar, and that's, that's just how they're designed. So unless you find a place where you're lucky, you pretty much have to eat at home, I think.
So like our summer plant camp, we're also going to be talking more to, because it's mostly teachers, we're going to be talking to teachers how to especially those with kids, how do you navigate, you've got so many responsibilities. How can you make it easier to eat plant-based throughout the week, not just on the weekends?
And I have a question. When you were in New York, you did the plant-based challenge with the staff members and the school districts. Are you doing that in Arizona as well?
We'll try and get into the schools here, but since they're on and off, not in session, teachers have a lot on their plates, and we didn't want to introduce anything new right here now. Once everything opens back up, we plan on, trying to meet up with some of the schools here. But we're still going to be doing the one for New York this January.
And typically what we do is on our Eat Plants Love group, or anybody who reaches out to us, we say everybody's welcome. And that is absolutely free. There's no cost involved. We had a teacher from Vermont. She reached out to us and said, I got 14 people in my building to do it this year. Will you
Let us join.
Let us join. I said, of course. So we're doing that. And we accept anybody anywhere. And if you wanted to get a group to do it, that's great. And what you get basically is you get access to recipes. We do a daily newsletter, and this newsletter is a mix of videos and recipes and science. We use nutritionfacts.org for a lot of the science part. And it's really for those people that want to learn a little bit more. And the newsletters are pretty engaging. People say at the end of the challenge that they miss our newsletters. So
we usually have success stories in there, a recipe, the science, some video on some subject, maybe a recommendation for something, but it's free. So hopefully guys will come join us.
Or bring friends along.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people are commenting on the chat box about your cookbooks, and you can find both your cookbooks, Eat Plants Love and Eat More Plants Love. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, the two books, Eat More Plants Love and Eat Plants Love, they're both available on our website.
Yes, you can get them on Amazon, but Amazon charges
more money.
an arm and a leg. Initially, we were selling through them, and we would, submit it, and it was print on demand. And like for every book, we got like 52 cents, and they were charging $22.95. So it's like that's just ridiculous. So through our site,
we ship it directly to you.
And typically, as Marion, as you know, we shipped it out the next day. You ordered it and we shipped it.
That was good customer service. That's perfect. Yeah. So for those of you, I did type it in the chat box, but it's eatplantslove.com/shop to get their books. You can get both their books for $29, which is great. And we also, on our PBNSG.org website, we have our Perfectly Plant-Based Cookbook.
Yeah.
We have it too. We have that book.
Yeah. So, check that out. And on your regular website, do you have a newsletter on your regular website or no? Is it mostly your Facebook
posts?
I put blog posts out. We're now that I'm retired, we're working at what we're going to put out. So over time we may, that has been something we've thought about. I've thought about. We'll see how things develop over time. Also with our cookbooks, if you're still hesitant, you can always go to Amazon, type it in, and look at the reviews. Some people put some great reviews there. I'm pleased that they like them so much because we just like cooking the food we
And we
like.
do have the option for a digital version as well. You can download.
Which is cheaper.
Very much cheaper.
So.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you too. And for those of you watching, if you're not familiar with our PBNSG.org website, if you're not subscribed to get our newsletters, just go to the PBNSG.org. On the main page, you just scroll down and you can subscribe, and all of our events are there. That's probably where most of you found Doug and Shari's class. And of course, you'll get the video replay tomorrow, usually within 24 hours. You'll receive that in a separate email, along with the links to Doug and Shari's website, their Facebook page, and their email address.
And the recipes as well, right?
Right, and the recipes, right, yes. The recipes for the Patatas Bravas and the stuffed mushrooms. And I have mushrooms in my fridge right now. I think I might use those.
Let us know how it turns out.
Okay, I will. Those are great. I'm sure they'll be great anyway. But thank you so much, Doug and Shari, for spending your time with us and helping us learn to cook some more new foods.
Well,
and
thank you for having us.
Everybody else. Yeah, thank you. And thanks everybody. And Have a good evening and we'll see you at another event.
Eat plants and love without limits.
Yeah, thank you.